What up, y'all? It's Joe Budden, here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. You can get up to 100 times your money.
Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code SPOTIFY. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
This is Cop Talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, the great Captain Ed Mehmet.
Welcome, WABC listeners. It's good to be back. I was out for a while. I missed everybody, but here I am with a prominent man that we invited, and you should enjoy what he has to say.
So today's guest, we're lucky to have Eric Sanders. Eric Sanders is a former NYPD police officer, did 13 years, retired in 2000, and now has his own law firm, and he has many cases with the NYPD, which we're going to discuss today. Very interesting. Eric, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So, Eric, why don't you give everyone your background?
Well, I guess I got to talk about my NYPD. It's funny how I joined the NYPD because my neighbor was Bill Perry. He was a deputy commissioner.
Okay.
And I used to see unmarked car all the time because at that time I was in a military college. One of my things that I wanted to do, I should have done, was fly F-18s. So when I came back to New York, I saw the car all the time. I say, what do you do? He says, I work for the police department. I said, oh, that sounds like a good job. I think I'll join the police department. And then I went through the background check and joined the police department. That's how I got in.
Right. What year was that?
That was in 1988, January 26, 1988.
Wow, 1988. Now, where'd you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in part in Brooklyn and Bushwick, and then I moved to Queens Village. So these guys that talk about the Seven Crowns and all those groups that Eric and these people are talking about, I know all those groups. It's just I stayed away from them.
Right. So that's where you grew up then.
After
and then
Jamaica.
What made you want to become an attorney and go to law school?
It's interesting. I used to be as quiet as it's kept. I used to, believe it or not, used to be the first vice president of the Guardians. And then I became the president of Guardians, and I saw things in the police department that were interesting.
So just explain to our audience what the Guardians is.
The Guardians is a fraternal organization in the police department, started in 1949, and it's specifically geared towards African-American police officers. It was the first one in the United States, and then it built out from there.
Okay, so the main one was NYPD, from NYPD?
Yes.
Okay. And how many members at that time?
At that time, altogether, it's about 8,000 some odd members.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and then that, I kind of was interested. And my goal wasn't to go to law school, by the way. I just did it as I think I should go to law school. I'm like that every once in a while. I'll get bored. Let me do something else. So when I started looking, I think when I was the first vice president of Guardians, I started to see things that were interesting, like the hair test, for example. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go back and finish, get my undergrad, and then I think I'm going to go to law school. And that's it. That's how I wound up in law school.
Wow.
But I swore I would never do any police cases, by the way.
Okay.
I would go back to Wall Street, but
that didn't happen.
Nah, that happened. No.
So when you came on the job, you went through the academy, and then where were you assigned?
My first assignment, I was in, back then they called it NSU, or Field Training 17. So I was in Queens South. So I worked all the Queens South location, 102, 107, 109.
Well, back then it just was Queens, though, right? Now it's South and North, right?
Well, right, it was Queens, right.
Right.
Well, they had 18, which was South, but
Okay.
Queens was all one borough, but 18 covers South.
Right, okay.
17 covered the other part of South, which is the northern part, and then 16 covered like Jackson Heights to 110 and those kind of locations. Okay. So I worked those, and then my permanent assignment was the 101, or what we call Rockapoco.
Rockapoco. So that's the Rockaways, right?
Oh, the Rockaways.
Is that Far Rock? No, it's Rockaways or
No,
Rockaways?
Far Rockaway. Far Rockaway is bad.
Okay, gotcha.
It was
so
bad.
It was busy then. I think it's still busy today.
Oh yeah, I got a million stories about that place.
Actually, I think that's where Detective Dilla was shot and killed.
You're talking about Eddie Byrne, not Eddie Byrne. What's his name? Scott Goodell.
That was a long time ago.
Right, Scott Goodell was killed on the corner of 32nd Street and Seagull Boulevard. That's what made the department go from the drop piles to the speed loaders.
Right. I remember that because he was loaning his gun.
Right.
But recently, about a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, police officer Dilla was killed. Am I correct on that?
I'm not sure
Dilla,
if
and
it
they
was
became,
Rocky.
I
it
believe
was
it was the
Far Rockaway,
Rockaways.
yeah.
He wasn't from that precinct. They were in a detail assigned to that precinct.
Oh, okay,
And
that's
he was
what I
shot and
thought.
killed. They pulled over a car and didn't. Unfortunately, he was shot and killed.
Mm-hmm.
And he was promoted to detective first grade. But that was Dilla. Yeah, not too long ago.
Right.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So then that was my permanent assignment. Of course, I was doing a cracker. It was interesting. We didn't have 9mm at that point.
Right. Yeah.
So it was a different world then.
True. Cap.
You covered most of the things I was going to ask you about, your career, promotion, retirement, and so on. But you mentioned Bill Perry. Now, Bill Perry and I came off the same lieutenant's list.
Oh, yeah?
I was the president of the eligibles group, and he was the vice president. And we became very close. And he eventually became a deputy commissioner, as I recall, right?
That's right.
Under, I think, Ben Ward.
Yep.
He became deputy commissioner of community affairs. Is he still around? I haven't heard from him in years.
Yeah, no, he still lives in Queens Village. I was his next door neighbor.
Oh. Are you still in touch with him?
No, I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Very jovial, friendly guy.
As a teenager, I used to cut the grass. I used to, do that kind of stuff. Deliver newspapers, stuff they don't do today.
Exactly. True. Now it's online, the newspaper.
Yeah.
Can you tell us some more about the Guardians Association? What you did? How many years? First of all, how many years were you the president?
Yeah, it was 1 year between the vice president and president. That was pre-merger. But the Guardians Association, the reason why it was started, the idea behind it was back then in the 1940s, during the time, there was things that happened in the police department, such as unequal promotions, things like that. That was the whole concept of the Guardians, to deal with that legal issue. And you will see over the time they brought legal issues for the sergeant exam, for captains, all kinds of stuff. So that's primarily what it's supposed to be there for.
Well, a lot of these organizations started for the same reason. I'm Jewish, and I belong to the Shamrim Society. And the Shamrim Society, the Jewish guys were discriminated against. In fact, there's a famous story of somebody in the department saying to a Jewish guy, you should be carrying a salami under your arm rather than a nightstick. So
Right. A lot of these groups are, same thing. The Colombians, the Colombian
Emerald Society,
the Emerald Society,
right.
Gold,
the
Gay Officers Action League, so there's a bunch of different groups. Yeah.
And there's also more now than when we were on the job.
Oh yeah, now there's this.
Yep.
Man, there's probably like double, triple amount of groups now. It's like subsects of other groups now.
True.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
And then after that, you asked me about my career. Then I went from
Post-retirement.
that permanent command to the 113.
So 113 was your permanent command?
That was my last permanent command.
Okay.
While I was going to law school.
Okay. And where'd you go to law school?
St. John's Law School.
St. John's. Okay, great. And when did you pass the bar exam?
2003.
2003. Now, did you start, so you passed the bar exam, you're an attorney now. Who are you working for?
When I first left law school, I was working for Bo Deal at the time, and then I was also working for CNA Insurance. I was doing insurance fraud. So I was doing on both for that company and the other company. Then I started working for Jeffrey O. Goldberg, PC, and he does all this pension stuff. He's been doing pensions for years. I worked for him as a managing attorney, and then I went out and opened my own law firm in 2010.
Okay. And now your law firm is located in Manhattan?
I have an office in Manhattan. There's also one in Yonkers.
Okay. Yeah.
And you've had some successful cases, like Sal Greco. Can you tell us about the Sal Greco
Let's
case?
talk about the Sal Greco case.
Oh, Sal Greco. Sal Greco's interesting because
by the way, we've had him on twice here.
Oh, you really?
He's a friend, yes.
Okay, yeah.
So-
No, Sal's fine. I talk to him every day. Sal Greco's interesting because it deals with criminal association, and believe it or not, that was the first case I ever tried in the police department's trial room, a criminal association case in 2005, and it was a not guilty. So it was interesting to me to see that he didn't get a not guilty in his case. It doesn't make any sense. So what it boils down to is the police department has this rule of criminal association. And to this day, when I ask the question to the investigators, they still can't answer the question. What does that mean? What does knowingly mean? What is a criminal association? That is one of these rules in the department you weaponize against people, because how are police officers supposed to know a person has a background or a particular background? I mean, we can go back to the 80s with Biaggi and all the rest of these guys. I mean, that's the case. You can get associations all the time. Yeah. But what Sal Greco case is interesting is some anonymous letter came in and says, well, him and this another cop in the 6-0 is going to engage in civil unrest. What does that mean? I don't know. So the Internal Affairs started investigating him, Group 26, started investigating him, see if he checked the license plate reader database. No, he didn't check that. He didn't check any of the database. I mean, we have the database are all similar throughout the United States, e-justice, all these law enforcement databases they checked. Sal Greco didn't do any of that stuff. So they had nothing on him but except one thing. He was January 6th, he was with Roger Stone. And that's what they used to terminate him. So they said, oh, you have your picture of Roger Stone. They try to connect him to the Proud Boys. He wasn't part of the Proud Boys or any of those other so-called subversive groups. So they attached him to Kristen Davis, who was back then the Mayflower Madam, if you remember, with her cases. Yeah. So they got him with these two people, and they said, well, you were associating with people who was likely associating, committing crimes, all this kind of nonsense. That's it. That's his case in a nutshell. So the the investigator said, well, he's with them all the time. He had his shield and his ID, so he must be a uncompensated security. So they do the investigation. They bring him up on charges, go to the trial room. They use a whole bunch of pictures, and then they convict him, saying that he's a deterrent to the department, all this other kind of nonsense, and they terminate him. Meanwhile, if you look at the disciplinary matrix, it says 30 days in a year. So the question is, why did they terminate him? Fast forward, Sal hires me. So now we get into the discovery, and I have all these pictures of Sue Wells, the police commissioner, Shea, all these different executives. I call them the meat eaters. Now we're going back to the 70s, right? The meat eaters versus grass eaters, right? Corruption. So anyway, I have a whole bunch of pictures of videos of these people all hanging out with Jimmy Rodriguez.
Consofrito.
Mr. Lucchese crime family guy. So they're with him. They're with Caban's brother. Wait a minute. These people have criminal records. So we can probably estimate about 300 or 400 people have been associating with, Consofritos, these different locations, yet no one was terminated. So in Sal's case, I questioned the investigator, Cutter, and I showed him the picture. He says, well, you can't really tell anything about a picture. You got to take it out of context. I said, but that's all you guys had on Sal is a picture. You didn't even speak to Roger Stone. So, yeah, that's his case in a nutshell. So with his case, we're scheduled to depose Sewell, who's the police commissioner, who's going to have a lot to answer for, and the actual other investigator, who, by the way, was caught perjuring himself in another police officer's case where, I don't know if you remember that case with this guy Paz. They accused these cops of prostitution, trafficking women for purpose of prosecution. Meanwhile, all these guys had was a bachelor party. So they wound up getting not convicted in Queens, and Orenstein was caught perjuring himself on the wire. He was saying, oh, these certain things on the wire, it's not minimized at certain times. But anyway, the bottom line is he's caught perjuring himself. And these Nieves brothers, they were not guilty. And then the department had to go back, retroactively promote the brother to sergeant and the other brother to lieutenant. So it's the same people involved in Sal's case.
Wow. Now, Sal's case is going on for about 4 years now, right?
Oh, yeah. They're dragging that on. They won't let me get to Sewell. Now it's in front of the judge. So I think she's going to let us get to him. They're not going to be able to avoid it. She's got a lot to answer for. Trust me. I have all the pictures. You got the AG there, Tish James. We have Clark from the Bronx. Right. Oh, it's a free fall.
That's the Consofrito.
Oh, yeah, Consofrito.
So they targeted Sal Greco based on that unanimous BS.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. That's the only thing he had. Right. The guy had no disciplinary history, nothing, just the pictures.
And they kept pursuing it until they found
They kept pursuing BS, it. Right. Kristen Davis hasn't had an arrest record. Who cares and how long? But remember, the police department got caught doing something cute that I found out during his case. They were caught accessing sealed records since the 70s. And that's what they did with Sal's case. They went to get the sealed records to establish the criminal records of these two parties. They were already closed. And they did something else interesting that police officers should be interested in. They used the administrative code to have these administrative subpoenas. Oh, you got to love these. They just stamp them and they go look at people's records, families, everything. And they do criminal investigations. One of the things I think is Hart. Hart was a judge, but he was a deputy commissioner of legal matters. And he says, oh, well, they were doing an investigation. I said, no, they were doing a criminal investigation. That administrative subpoena doesn't allow for that. But it's never been truly litigated in this city of New York. There's only one case, and it's in Queens. And the judge says, no, you can't do a criminal investigation with an administrative subpoena. They give them out hundreds of thousands of things every year. It's like a free fall. So there's a lot of stuff I found out. That's me giving a short.
You bring up an interesting point about administrative subpoenas. After I retired, I was doing some expert witness work, and I represented a guy that was on trial for sexual molestation. And the IAB, or whoever had the investigation, or the DA's office, they missed the time limit. They were going to judges to get subpoenas. And I testified that they didn't have to do that. It's sort of a reverse of what you're talking about. I said they could go to the department and get an administrative subpoena for these telephone records. So the judge was shocked. She said, "You mean to tell me there's an alternative?" I said, "Yes." She says, they come to me all the time to sign subpoenas for telephone records. I didn't know that they could do this internally. So there's a two-edged sword there. And on the basis of that, the judge threw out the case, even though I thought the guy was guilty. but,
Right.
That was my job. It was a technicality.
Right. So, and those administrative subpoenas are supposed to be used for a very limited purpose, but it's never been litigated. It's going to be litigated in this case.
Man, you have a lot to do.
Yeah.
How many cases have you brought to the trial room, been involved in with the trial room?
I don't
NYPD?
really bring many cases to the trial room. See, my reputation is if they see me come to the trial room, they know I'm going to be suing.
Right.
So,
but has there been, how many cases have you been, where your clients, someone hired you because they're in the trial room?
I don't take that many.
Okay.
In the last, I've been doing this now, 22 years?
Okay.
Less than 10?
Right.
I don't take me. If I go to the trial room, that means I'm suing. They know that already.
Gotcha. They don't want to see you come.
No.
Lock the
I'm
door,
known as being. They tell me I smile a lot, but I smile. But they say, no, he's a heavy litigator.
Oh, yeah.
Don't let the smile fool you.
Exactly.
But aren't the bulk of your cases police officers that are in trouble?
Oh yeah, 92% of the cases I have are NYPD cases.
Eric, can you speak upon some of these cases?
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of sexual harassment, but the ones that are really interesting are the things with the hair test and the psychological. Those are going to morph into decades litigation. I mean, recently I just settled a lactation rights case, which is all the female officers and civilians so they can put the room so they can go and express milk and for their child. Yeah. That was something else I got involved in. If I could have kept the group together, it was doing 12,000 women.
Yeah. I mean,
broke, though.
From what I'm hearing from friends of mine who that kids are trying to come on the job or have come on the job, a lot of kids are being disqualified, I'm hearing, from the psych test. And no really particular reason. Just it's a way like, okay, you get out of here, come back, appeal it, whatever. Okay. And some kids are like, oh, well, then I'm not coming back and see you later. Meanwhile, as you know, the NYPD needs to recruit, and you would think that, I mean, why are they doing this?
I'm going to tell you something interesting, how I stumbled upon something the department is doing is wrong. So back in 2012, I represented 4 deputy sheriffs, well, at least they were applicants at the time, and they were trying to become the members of the sheriff's department, Department of Finance. At the time, the NYPD was doing the psychological exams. First of all, they call them psychological exams. There's no such thing as a misnomer. There are no psychological examinations for police officers. It's not forensic. It's clinical. How do you feel? And let me write how you feel. So there's no clinical test for police officers, by the way. The MMPI, the CPI, and those kind of examinations, they're all clinical assessments applied to policing. So, yeah, that's a misnomer. But anyway, back in 2012, these 4 people went to take the exam. And there was a pool of, I think, if I remember right, there's 20 candidates. All the black candidates failed. All of them failed. And one candidate went to the New Jersey State Police, and guess what? He's a New Jersey State Trooper right now. Right. So they called me about this case, and I started to do a little research, and I stumbled across a case called Griggs versus Duke Power. 1971 case. It was about a bunch of black employees that worked for Ford, and they gave them a battery of tests. And they sued, said, these tests are not related to my job. That's the uniform guidelines. So I stumbled upon the uniform guidelines of employee selection procedures, which is a federal law that applies to all battery of tests, promotions, blood tests, any test you as an employer saying that you want your applicants to take on your employees have to meet that standard. It means it has to be valid, it has to be validated, it has to be business related, and can't have a disparate impact on the protected categories: race, national origin, gender, disability, age. If it has a disparate impact, guess what? presumptively invalid. So I stumbled upon this. So I sued. Anyway, we litigated for a little while. When the judge didn't dismiss the cases, they immediately settled all 4 cases. So I abandoned the psychological at that point. And then I picked it up again this year. And I started digging into it again, now applying the uniform guidelines now, and then looking at the licensing requirements. All hell's going on. I don't understand what they're doing. Yeah. No one's licensed. So that's actually e-felony in New York. So I started digging more into it, and I found out that even one of my clients, the person hasn't even been permitted since 2019. Wow. So the police department, in their infinite wisdom, I don't know who gave them this legal advice, but they claim there's an exemption. Well, I took and looked at the whole legislative history from the beginning to the end. There are no exemptions.
I believe in schools there are, right?
The schools and the Office of Mental Health.
You know, you mentioned one of your clients became a New Jersey state trooper, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So a friend of mine's son failed a psychological here. But yet today, as we speak, he's on the New York State Department of Corrections.
Right.
How does that work?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because most people, when you fail one psychological, all these other law enforcement agencies, they block you. But now they have something, I don't know if you're aware, it's called a Professional Policing Act of 2021. Remember, they had the Municipal Police Training Council standards. Mm-hmm. It means all these law enforcement agencies had to have these same hiring standards. Now it's all uniform across the state. It's like 600 some odd law enforcement groups. Now they all have to follow the same hiring standards. One thing they want is a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist. The NYPD still has these doctor psychologist level 1s and 2s that don't have a license or a permit.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to litigate that. So I made a FOIA request going all the way back to 80s. I know I'm not going to get that information, but I'm going to try. And I'm going to try to match up the state's list with the list from the employees. Mm. This goes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. They make up things. And I wrote a blog to you before we got on the air. I talked about it. I found out another little trick they're doing. They have this thing called psychological hold. So when you see it, you go, wow, it's a psychological hold. Maybe there's something wrong with this candidate. No. The psychological hold is being placed on it by administrative people who are police officers, definitely not qualified. That would be practicing, again, psychology or e-felony. Right. But what's cute, what they're doing, is it's not basing it on an assessment. Basically, well, we don't have the transcripts, we don't have the thing for the tickets, we don't have the driving abstract. Put them on psychological hold so we can get them out of our queue. So when these people eventually go out of the system, when they go to Suffolk County or New Jersey State Police or something, what do you see? Psychological hold, disqualified. So they're damaged not only in the NYPD system, but the other law enforcement systems too. This is a big problem. Right. And the police headquarters are not happy with me right now. I'm exposing it. But hey, someone's got to do it, right?
Yeah. No, I mean,
we discussed this before, you and I. For 3 years, I was on leave of absence to the state education department. I'm familiar with the licensing regulation. It's not only an e-felony to practice psychology without being licensed, it's an e-felony to use the term.
Exactly.
You can't even say I'm a psychologist if you don't have the license.
That's right.
And that was a heavy hit. And that came from the board, the psychology board, because they were fed up with a lot of these people who were therapists. They had all these different titles who were claiming they were psychologists. And the department, to their shame, hired these people, not even realizing what the law is all about.
Well, there was a recent article that talked about out of the 74 persons, 55 of them are unlicensed. Wow. And then remember, the person who even has a permit has to be supervised. So think about it. I did a calculation. I did a rough calculation. To get one candidate in the academy, you have to interview or process 8 people, for example. Just going back to 2015, that's 250,000 assessments. Going back to the 80s, you know what that would mean, right?
Oh, forget it, yeah. Yeah.
They're not happy with me now, but hey, they've been getting away with this for years.
Right.
Aren't you going to bring a class action?
I'm supposed to be in retirement right now, allegedly.
You should never retire.
Too young to retire. A lot of work ahead.
How many cases do you think there are like this?
Well, remember, for class, all you need is a group, and then these are going to be similarly situated. So that's why I'm making a FOIA request up front. See what happened with the lactation rights case. I had 5 women, 3 of them retired, and that broke my class. what I should have done is put the 50 females I spoke to, and then I could have kept the class together, been 12,000 women. Same thing with the DOE is 25,000 women. But I mean, I got things changed, but that's like billions of dollars in damages.
Wow.
Then you might not see me here. I'll be flying a plane somewhere.
So meanwhile, these cops that were saved by the judge, right, who kept them from being fired, where are they assigned now?
Oh, I tweeted about that. The day before that was supposed to happen, I actually sent out a tweet. I said, how did he find out about that? And all hell broke loose. Then the PBA jumped in. And matter of fact, the guy who's the PBA general counsel that works for the PBA, not the law firms, he actually went to St. John Law School too. That's Fred Vasselman. He worked in 103 when I was in the 113.
Okay.
So we kind of talk about it. He says, I'm going to use this. So they went and they got a judge that was interested and said, hey, how do you retroactively decertify people with no fraud? There's nothing in the law that allows for that, by the way. I don't know who gave them that advice, but that's a whole nother legal problem. But you know what they're doing now, Ed? They're working in an academy cleaning, and they have them in a closet. That is going to be another problem. You just didn't hear about you're hearing about it now first. Yeah.
Wow.
They're cleaners, but their guns and shields and ID were removed, I assume.
All of them were removed. There's only one person that's in the academy. Everyone else was out in the field. They were performing in the commands, no problems. And they misled the public. They said, oh, these are psychological affairs. No, they weren't. Some of them was driver's license, parking tickets, or somebody smoked marijuana 20 years ago. Who cared? At this point, listen, when we came on, it was a different group of people. It was more, follow the rules straight. Now it's the new group, man. It's a different police department now. Half these people smoke cocaine. I mean, you don't know what the hell they did anymore. This is different. You're going to do a different candidate now. So now you got to allow for some of this stuff. Yeah. So
Gen Zs.
Oh yeah, that's them Gen Zs. Yeah. So
now getting on to another subject, you work with our illustrious mayor, who may not be mayor long. So
well, yeah. Oh, okay, Adams. Okay, I actually never worked with Eric, but at the time, he was the first vice president of the Transit Guardians, and I was the first vice president of NYPD Guardians. So when he was coming up, of course, he was using the Guardians to do his little political stuff. Me, I was interested in the hair test and things that have to do with rights. So we kind of didn't, let's just say, we like oil and water. We eventually came to an understanding, but he could never beat me. So that's how they formed the 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement. See, a lot of people don't know that.
Oh,
interesting. I didn't know that either. I remember them.
Yeah, well, that's how they started, because he couldn't beat me to become president, even though we did a pre-merger and got the groups together. He still couldn't beat me for president. So just like Anthony Miranda with the National Latino Officers Association, he couldn't do anything with the Hispanic Society, so they opened that group. So now you know the real reason why they opened the groups.
Wow, interesting.
But they don't exist anymore, right?
Well, they technically exist, but they built their platforms and they sprung their political careers. Eric became a senator first, and then the mayor, because the Grand Council of Guardians he couldn't do it with. And then Miranda kept running for office, couldn't get office, so then he brought him on as a sheriff.
Right.
And Hiram Montserrat, I was in the academy where he was in my sister company.
I was just going to mention that name.
He's
Montserrat.
in 32, yeah. He's in 32, I was in 29.
Wow, interesting.
That went fast, right?
Miranda, I remember him. Yep. Interesting. So you do know the mayor, Adams. You worked with him, as you said. Mm-hmm. What's your thought? Are you a city resident?
No, not a city resident any longer.
Okay. I'll ask you anyway. What's your thoughts on the next mayor's race? The mayor's race going on now.
People are making this big deal about who the mayor is going to be. And I say the same thing about all political figures. The way the Constitution is written, and we have a state constitution and a city charter. No one person can control anything. So it doesn't really matter who's the head. It really doesn't. Right. They have limited control, but the way who's going to win, to me, it doesn't really matter.
Well, we're retired cops, right?
Yeah.
So as far as the police department, who do you think would be best for the police department?
I think the police department, the way they run it is too passive now, honestly. I think that, it's a lot different these days. Eric, he talks about he has a law enforcement background, and technically he does. The problem is a big difference between being an administrator and someone who's a street cop or people that really enforce different animals. Mandami, he knows nothing about this stuff. He's going to have to get someone. He's just like, he's good as Tish coming in. She doesn't know anything about the police department. She may be a nice person, but know nothing about law enforcement. Cuomo, same thing. You know, they have to bring in someone, whoever the person is going to be, someone who really understands the culture and really understands law enforcement. Not just be an administrator, because those fail every time. Sewell failed, and I know Sewell when she was a cop in Nassau County. She failed. Howard Safer failed. Lee Brown, they call him out of town Lee Brown, but that was probably the largest expansion of the police department under him and Dinkins. But the people who really understood law enforcement is when we had the most results. Although the other side of that is that you have lawsuits, like under Kelly with the Floyd case. But it was a lot different as far as cleaning out the problems. Right now, it's just anything goes.
Yeah, I mean, some of these commissioners you mentioned that failed, you know, you think it was because of the powers to be, not necessarily them running the job?
No, the police department is an interesting culture. I mean, it goes back to 1645, technically. But then I wrote something about this. I start out with the Dutch rattle watches. You know, that's how it all started, way back in 1607. But it's a complex problem. But I think you have to get someone who really understands the culture and really understand the city. I think it's very hard to bring an outsider. Like, I know they try to bring the person from Seattle. I forgot her name, from Seattle. Then,
right.
Yeah, they try to bring her in.
No,
and
there's enough,
Washington, D.C. No, there's enough
talent here. Right,
there's
exactly.
enough talent
Absolutely.
here. We definitely need someone that's from the department.
Yeah,
but then I have an argument that we have too many administrative positions, because they're talking about we don't have cops. We have plenty of them. They're hiring in Police Plaza and all these other places. You know, get those administrative jobs.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, we probably have a good 10,000 people that are hired in administrative locations. I mean, hire some civilians, put them out in the street where they belong.
Okay. Well, I think Curtis Lee was pretty good on crime. You know, he comes from the streets and.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, like I said, I'm not necessarily endorsing any particular candidate, but out of all the candidates, he at least has boots on the ground. He understood what it's like and when he came out with the Guardian Angels, forget about it, in the 80s, it was, people talk about the trains and stuff, and I says, the trains are horrible. I said, did you know what the trains used to look like? I mean, really, it was a lot different. It was a lot different. So,
I grew up in the city, I know.
Right, and they came out when it wasn't popular to do that. So, I mean, he's been in it a long time.
Yeah. True. Cap?
Well, I think this was a great interview, and I'm glad we had you. And you've opened everybody's eyes to this big lawsuit that's pending with the police department. I'm wondering how they're going to handle it.
Oh, and the drug test, too, remember. That's something else they've done. They're giving this drug test. Well, I'm going to mention this before I go.
Please.
The drug test is another problem. Boston PD started this drug test with this company called Psychmedics in 1999, and immediately they were subject to litigation. Without getting too complex, what it boils down to is, in order for you to give a test, it has to meet that uniform guideline standard. It never met the standard. Anyway, they wound up getting sued. Black officers were getting terminated because there's research that goes back to the 50s that you can wash hair out of contamination, but people have melanin, they can have, let's say, 1 million particles of some kind of metabolite. But if you have blonde hair, you have only a third of that. And they can't figure out why and how to equal that out with the washing technique. So anyway, Boston gets sued. 2021, they stopped using it, and they just settled the case for $2 million. The same test the NYPD is still using to this day.
Wow.
And it doesn't meet the Fried test for scientific acceptability. I mean, I can go on and on with it. But the bottom line is, that's the next big case I'm going to bring. That's definite.
Right. So
that goes back to 2000.
You can't retire.
I know. I'm supposed to be, winding down.
So, Eric, why don't you tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you if they'd like to present the case to you?
I don't like to advertise, but since you asked the question, you can always Google me. My name, my company is Sanders Firm PC. You can call me at 212-652-2782. Or, of course, if you Google me or you go to my website, you can find me. I write all kinds of stuff about legal stuff, because I think it's a very important decision when you go to hire lawyers. So I have a tendency to give lots of free information on my website about sexual harassment, pension rights, all kinds of stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Cap, to wrap it up.
Yes, well, we hope that you're successful in your future career without retirement. And again, we're glad to have you here. Maybe we'll have you on again.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Eric, it's been a pleasure. Okay, great interview. Thank you for coming on. I know you're very busy. And I'm sure that after this episode, you'll be getting a lot more work. But keep up the good work. And once again, Eric Sanders, our guest, I'd like to thank him for being here today. I would like to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Cop Talk. You can follow us on social media. It's wabcradio.com/Cop Talk. Okay, that's wabcradio.com/Cop Talk in regards to the social media. And until next time, God bless you, God bless America, God bless military throughout the country, and also God bless our law enforcement throughout the country. Thank you.